Hey there! Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Figuring It Out. This is the place where we have conversations that are going to set you up to win. I'm your host, Aggie, and today's topic is adult peer pressure. Let's figure it out. Welcome back. Please make sure to subscribe, like, and share my episodes, especially if you believe and feel that the content is helping you make progress. I would really appreciate it. Today's episode is about adult peer pressure. Guys, I'm realizing that unfortunately not everyone's heart is in the right place. Sometimes people make mistakes, and as a way of not being the only people that are having to deal with the mistakes that they made, they rather try to push more people to make the same decisions, so that, the more the merrier. Or maybe people say things like misery loves company or something like that. A concrete example is, people who have made decisions to buy properties in very expensive parts of the world. I think right now every part of the world is probably expensive, but sometimes people go into buying property as their first investment, and they take a loan, and they have interest rates that are maybe not that friendly, plus all the additional costs that are tied to buying a home. And then they start the journey of paying for this home for the next 20 years of their lives. Maybe 5 years in, they start to realize, oh, I really don't have flexibility to leave, to travel, to now I discover there were cheaper homes in Zanzibar, but hey, I'm already paying for this home in the Netherlands, or I'm already paying for this home in Germany. And they're like, I think I might have made the wrong decision. But then what do? They start to encourage other people to make the same decision as well. And I think that's sad. They start to pressurize people to move out into bigger homes. They start, asking weird questions like, when are you moving out of your home? I mean, my husband and I, we have had people ask us that so many times, and we're always like, what's the problem? Like, what's the problem? Do you want to pay for us? Like, do you want to contribute to our rent at our new house? Or why does it bother you so much that we stay where we stay? I mean, it's not like it's your home. You get to stay where you want to stay, and we get to stay where we want to stay. And we have experienced it so many times that, some couples have unfortunately not been able to make it because the pressure of the decisions that they have made has been so tough on their relationships that they couldn't make it, especially as kids started to come into the picture, and expenses started to shoot through the roof. And so it made me really think that I should make an episode about it, to help you think clearly, and to also always help you to ask critical questions. There are certain formulas that you can use, like the mental 5 whys. If someone says, when are you moving from your house? You could be like, why? And then they will give you some kind of answer, and you should allow yourself to go, to pose another why, and another why, and another why. And the reason behind that is that you basically sense check people and their motives by asking questions, and not falling into the trap of feeling like you need to give them a response straight away, or that you need to defend your position. Because I think by asking questions, you reposition, you reframe the situation, so they are allowed to process their own thoughts without necessarily making their thoughts your responsibility. It's like when someone tells you, why haven't you yet bought a car? I mean, you're a grown-up. You decide when you want to buy a car, if you want to buy a car for whatever reason, but you don't get to buy the car simply because the person is putting you under pressure, or because they feel that because they bought a car, you have to buy a car. It's the same thing with, when are you getting married? You should really stop these kinds of people in their tracks, because the thing is, when I get married, you're not going to be in the marriage with me. So why is it so important to you that I get married? And those are the questions that you should ask. Why is it important to you that I should get married. They probably say, yeah, because it's the right thing to do, or because you're at that age or whatever. And then you go like, but why is that so important to you, you know? Or why is age such a big deal? And just keep probing for the why, so that you force these people to actually go through the thinking process that hopefully will educate them not to ask you these kinds of questions anymore. Because I think because we're so quick to respond to these questions, and mostly with a defensive standpoint, people get away with it, and then they build this very strange environment of peer pressure, of adult peer pressure. So now we have to buy houses in certain suburbs, we have to get married, we have to work certain types of jobs, and you see the pressure is just unnecessary and unrealistic, and it stifles your creativity, stifles your joy, and basically probably sweeps you into the wrong direction. And for me, the most unfortunate thing is that it makes you ungrateful for the things that God is already doing in your life. We're not all supposed to be the same. We're not supposed to have the same skin shade. We're not supposed to have the same height. We're not supposed to have the same stature. God made us different for a reason. I love salads, and when you look at a salad, it would be really sad if every salad you found out there had only one ingredient, and that ingredient were like parsley leaves or something like that. It's important that you allow people who are carrots to be carrots, and people who are radish to be radish, and people who are tomatoes to be tomatoes, because when you bring that variety together, that is when you start to have a burst of experiences, and peer pressure kind of steals from that, you know. So really give thought to the things that are important to you, and hopefully find the spine and ask these critical questions that stop people who are trying to build peer pressure, that it stops them in their tracks. I remember when I was, I think I was about 18, I decided to take part in a competition, a singing competition. And I remember my friends, some of my friends at the time, who fortunately are no longer my friends, because at some point I grew up and I realized you have to let go of some people if you're going to be fully yourself. But some of these friends made me feel bad about my choice to join this singing competition. But the things that I learned in that singing competition are things that I'm still applying today. I learned how to train my voice. I learned breathing techniques. I learned, you know, the different types of voices, you know, the head voice and the chest voice and the diaphragm voice. I learned all of those things, and I'm able to apply them today, so many years later, because I engaged in that competition. So, and this is something that was important to me, and I can't tell you why singing is important to me. God put it in me that I should love singing, and I can imagine that if I had spoken to these people prior to going to the competition, they probably would have killed that dream because of, you know, the peer pressure of we do certain things and we don't do certain things. I think in previous episodes I also mentioned things like, you know, people who make a fuss around what mode of transport you're taking, whether you take a bike or you drive a car. It really doesn't matter. You know, what's really funny is that I think it was Steve Jobs. He was asked once if he would wear a Rolex, and he said it doesn't matter. These are not things that he's like busying his brain about. The most important thing is, can you tell the time, you know? And whether you tell the time on a Rolex or on a Swatch or whatever other type of watch you choose to have, that decision is up to you. And if a Steve Jobs who had all the money in the world could make that distinction and not be tied down to, you know, it has to be a brand and it has to be posh and it has to be a certain way. If he could empower himself to draw that line, I think you can too. So I hope that for you, that you protect your happy space, and that you find strength in being uniquely you, and that you stop people in their tracks when they try to pressure you towards certain decisions. And I mentioned in one of my episodes that there are certain questions you shouldn't ask people, because the outcome of some of the decisions that you have to make, the only person who is going to be directly impacted by those outcomes and directly responsible for those outcomes is you. So if someone is trying to pressurize you into buying a house, unless they're putting the down payment down plus all the additional payments, I think you should feel strong enough to stop them in their tracks. If they're trying to get you to buy, you know, the most expensive Louis Vuitton, but they're not the ones going to pay for it, I think you should feel strong enough to stop them in their tracks, because otherwise you're going to have a lot of people, or you're going to allow people to push you into trouble spaces and expenses, and just an amount of stress that only you will have to carry, and maybe decisions that only you will have to deal with and only you will have to regret. And I don't know if that's really, really worth it. So think about what's important to you and go after that. And I hope this helps you. And if you do that, if you stand up for what you believe in, if you live your life in an authentic way that is true to what you truly want, if you want that Louis Vuitton bag, then let it be your decision, but not because your group of friends is pushing you into it. You will realize that when you really start to listen to your heart and take the decisions that make you happy, you will be a happier person, but you will also be freeing other people to be themselves. And I think that adds way more value than most people actually realize. So whatever it is, if it's traveling, if it's staying in a certain class of hotels, if it's carrying a certain type of accessories, be watchful and do you. Do the authentic you as much as you can, because that frees us all to also be ourselves. And that's where the true value is. Okay, thank you so much for your time again. God bless you and see you in the next one. Bye-bye.